You might now have a better sense of what relief workers are up against in the flood zone. And here to give us some perspective from Pakistan itself is Ariane Rummery from the UNHCR. That's the UN's refugee agency, and she joins us now live. And thank you for joining us here on World Report. And first, how do you deal with the sheer scale of the disaster?
Well, I think that's the real word. It's the sheer scale, which means we have to respond on so many fronts at once. And there's still people not reaching, and we're still in the emergency phase. But at the same time, we're also trying to help those who are ready to go home in some of those areas like the northwest of the country, where the floodwaters have received, who are going back to completely destroyed houses, and trying to come up with programs to help some of them pick up the pieces and start again. So it's the complexity and the scale of this emergency which has been such a challenge for us all over the last few weeks.
And logistics and simply reaching the victims, is that your biggest challenge?
Well, reaching the victims is of course, the biggest challenge as well. There are still 800,000 people who are only accessible by helicopter at the moment, and so the UN's made a call for more helicopters. But also just trying to respond to the people who can go home. There are different phases of the emergency as well. People are going back to nothing. There's people I've met in the villages around Char Sadar, for example, in the northwest of Pakistan. Their whole not just their houses have been washed away, and these tend to be the very poor people who had mud houses. But their whole livelihoods have been washed away. So they might have been just people who work for a daily wage in the sugarcane fields around the areas. They've completely been destroyed, and not just this sort of crop, but the whole systems, the streams and so on that used to feed the crops have been destroyed. So people really have nothing, and we also need to help those people get back on their feet as quickly as possible as well.
And what about your funding? How well funded are you to handle this disaster?
Well, the funding's been a bit slow coming in. UNHCR has launched a 41 million campaign, but just as we're almost getting those funds in, we are, of course, having to revise it. Yesterday we launched another campaign for 120 million, and because we've had this slow-moving emergency with more and more people being assessed all the time, that may well change again. Even as we speak in parts of Sindh, there are more communities under threat. There's a second wave of flooding in other areas, so there's more and more people being affected all the time, and in those areas even where the floodwaters have receded, we're now getting better access to those communities. We're seeing just how bad is the damage, just what they need to get back on their feet. So we're going to need massive amounts of funding for some time to come.
Now, the UN has warned about the risk of disease for some time. How serious is it, and what is your team seeing?
Well, the risk of waterborne diseases is very, very high, and the health agencies are increasingly sounding the alarm about that. But even just simple things, I mean, you're out in the field and you meet people and you're talking to the women and children, and they're just scratching. They're scratching all the time because they have very bad skin diseases, fungal infections and scabies and things like that. Even the people who can go home, who might be over the worst of the flooding, they're trying to clear through the mud, and they tell you, we want to go and clean out our houses, but when we touch the mud, we start to itch more. So the skin diseases, as well as the more serious waterborne diseases, and as long as people have to stay in very damp conditions, if the water can't drain away from these places, then the water's stagnant. These things are going to get worse and worse.
We started our conversation earlier talking about the scale of this disaster. It stretches all across Pakistan. Some 20 million lives have been disrupted. So where are your teams on the ground, and how exactly are you helping out?
Well, the focus of UNHCR's operation is in the northwest, where we've had a very strong field presence over many years, where we've been most best placed to assist. This is in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the former Northwest Frontier province, and also in Balochistan. But increasingly we're also moving further south in Sindh and Punjab. One of the things that we've been doing as part of an interagency coordinated effort is looking after the shelter side of things. This is getting very basic things to people who still don't have shelter. It may be a tent, or it could just be some plastic sheeting where they can even repair some of their damaged homes or put up a shelter where they're staying. There's things like kitchen sets. When people are away from home, they have no way to cook for themselves, and this is really difficult, particularly this time of year in the month of Ramadan, where people are fasting during the day and having to prepare meals at night. Mosquito nets we're giving out, sleeping mats and things, those basic things that you need to prepare away from home. But at the same time, we're also looking ahead and seeing how we can best help people go back home. So we're developing some what we call quick impact projects. We want to have targeted things to, for example, drain out the communities that have been flooded, to restore the water points, to restore access roads in some of the villages, particularly some of the Afghan refugee villages also, which have been affected, in which UNHCR, as the UN Refugee Agency, has a real role in helping, just restoring some of the basic health and school points as well. And then we need to look ahead, what else do they need a bit more, particularly with winter coming. We're looking at some kind of transitional shelter, strengthening the tent or building some kind of warm room. So this is a very complex emergency. We're still in the emergency phase. People still need food, water and shelter, but we're also having to look ahead and seeing how we can, what projects can quickly help people return home. So in those areas where the floodwaters have receded, people can begin to pick up the pieces and get some kind of normalcy back in their lives.
You know, and you said, I mean, this is such a complex emergency, such a terrible, vast disaster, and it leaves a lot of us and our viewers scratching their heads thinking, how can we help? So what is your message to our viewers who are thinking about, how can I offer a hand?
Well, I think that we still need massive amounts of support from the international community. You can go to our website, UNHCR.org, and see how you can donate or help any of the other organisations in the field. And we really need to ask people not to forget Pakistan. I know that this country's been through quite a lot in recent years, but this is really a disaster of unprecedented scale. And when you see the damage out there in the communities, when you see the need people have, when you see people returning but not to nothing but 4 feet of mud, they're really going to need all the help they can get for the next few months and possibly years ahead.
Ariane Rummery of the UNHCR, thank you so much for joining us here on World Report, and take care and good luck to you and your teams there in Pakistan. Now, while the international response to the floods in Pakistan may seem very slow, sluggish, several other humanitarian crises have gone largely ignored, including Iraqi refugees. Almost 2 million